This murder is considered to be one of the most gruesome in Hollywood history, and the person responsible was dubbed as the West Hollywood Vampire. Just before I start, a quick 30 seconds to thank the sponsor of today's video, Wicked Clothes. They've released some new fresh underwear designs that you can pre-order, and whilst browsing to buy my serial killers and chill top, I found these cool plant designs too. So check them out because they do some seriously awesome designs, and even my old man got a couple of bits from them too. Here you can see him holding in his stomach repping this t-shirt. So click the link below for 10% off your basket or use Disturbing in the coupon section. So thank you to Wicked Clothes for supporting true crime on YouTube. And now, onto the video. This case takes place on the 26th of May 2016. Blake Leibel was a man born into enormous privilege and lived a life most people can only dream of. He was born in Canada but moved to America and lived in Los Angeles, California. He was the son of a Canadian Olympian and a property mogul named Lorne Leibel. His mother was named Ayanna, and she was the heir to a large plastics company. While growing up, he was given an allowance of $18,000 per month to do with as he pleased. His mother sadly passed away in 2011, and after her death, he inherited the majority of her estate, which was around $6 million. Blake was known as a rather strange and eccentric person. Some people that were once close to him would later recall conversations they had had, and during these conversations, he would randomly bring up strange and sexual violent topics in an odd attempt to shock people. Blake was in his father's shadow, and he aimed to create his own legacy and success. His goal was to become a respected comic book writer, and he used his money to create that image. He ended up directing a low-budget film called Bald, and he also directed a few episodes of the TV Spaceball series, which was a spin-off of the popular Mel Brooks film. He also helped to run a publishing company, and co-wrote and published a graphic novel called Syndrome. This graphic novel would be used as evidence in the future against him. On the outside, Blake seemed like a rather accomplished man, but in reality, he was spending far more than he was earning, which meant his father had to pick up the pieces and pay his bills for him. Blake was married to a woman named Amanda Braun, and they had a son together. The family lived in Beverly Hills, but in 2015, he filed for a divorce from his wife, who was also pregnant, and he left her just weeks before she would give birth. The breakup didn't really seem to faze Blake at all. He met a woman named Iana Kasian not too long after. Ayanna was born in Ukraine, and she studied law in college and worked as a tax prosecutor. In 2014, she moved to Los Angeles on a student visa, and was hoping to make a break as a model and create a better life for herself. It was there where she met and started to date Blake in 2015. Things moved very fast for the couple. In the same year, they became engaged, and only a couple months after that, Ayanna was pregnant. 3 weeks after the birth of their daughter, Ayanna was still recovering from a C-section when Blake's behaviour began to change. He started to get jealous of the attention he was giving to their newborn child. He threatened to leave her if she didn't have sex with him when he demanded, and he even told her that he would leave her and find another person to have sex with if she kept turning down his advances. Ayanna was reliant on him, so she agreed to let her newborn baby live with her mother, so the couple could focus on their sexual relationship. Ayanna's mother had moved from the Ukraine to help with raising the child. She described Blake as an incredibly controlling person, saying that he wanted her to do everything he told her to do. In mid-May of 2016, Blake had been charged with felony rape, and Ayanna was the one who bailed him out for $100,000. Blake had been having an affair with a woman behind Ayanna's back, and this woman accused him of this crime. When Ayanna discovered this information, she moved out of the apartment and moved in with her mother. On the 23rd of May 2016, Ayanna and her mother Olga were out shopping together, and during this outing, Ayanna started to receive multiple text messages from Blake, Ayanna stopped what she was doing with her mother and ran straight back to him. This would be the last time Olga would ever see her daughter. The next day, Olga tried to contact Ayanna, just to make sure she was okay after leaving abruptly. But she got no response. Her concerns began to grow, and she went to the apartment to see Ayanna for herself. She shouted her daughter's name from the outside, and when she did, Blake walked to the window, closed it, and walked away without acknowledging Olga at all. She then called the police and begged them to do a welfare check on her daughter at the couple's apartment, but it would take days for the police to act. The police first went to the apartment and knocked on the door, but nobody answered, so they left. But after hundreds of calls and messages that got no reply, the police finally decided to take proper action. They returned to Blake's apartment and broke down the front door. Once inside, they realised the hallway door had been barricaded. This door was quickly unhinged and removed, and when they did this, they noticed blood leading into the master bedroom. The police shouted Blake's name and demanded that he leave his room, but Blake shouted back and demanded that they leave. After some time, Blake's accountant and friend came over and managed to talk him into surrendering himself. Blake had actually called this man during the standoff with the police. Blake left the room wearing only his underwear. The police were then faced with what this man had done. Ayanna's lifeless body was found in the room, and the injuries that she had suffered are some of the most gruesome I have ever read about. Her entire scalp had been removed from the eyebrows to the back of her head, and it appeared that it had been scraped and cleaned. Almost all of the skin on the right side of her face had been cut and torn off, to the point that the surface of her skull bone was completely visible. There was also cuts and bite marks all over her body, and her left ear was missing. The cause of her death was severe blood loss due to torn arteries and veins. The doctor that examined her body discovered that she was alive during the entire torture process. The pieces of tissue that were collected from the crime scene showed hemorrhaging, which is an indicator that Ayanna was alive at the time. In total, over 80% of her scalp and face was removed, and more than half of the blood in her body had been drained. There was no blood in her heart, veins, or arteries. The doctor found the amount of blood lost to be extremely strange. He worked out that Blake would have had to place her in a bath with her head low and feet elevated. He then must have ran cold water over her scalped head. The water would have washed away the blood, stopping the healing process that would have stopped the blood flow. There were defensive wounds on Ayanna's right arm and both of her hands, which means she tried her best to fight back. When the police inspected the property, they found 11 trash bags waiting for disposal, and inside they found sheets covered in blood, chunks of human hair and human flesh, and the missing ear. On the right side of Blake's bed, they found a razor blade and a knife. As they searched the apartment, they found chunks of Ayanna's skin scattered all around. Ayanna was tortured for approximately 8 to 9 hours, and I can't even imagine the pain of not only being scalped and having flesh scraped from your skull, but also half of your face being ripped off and cut. During the trial, the prosecution team used Blake's work against him. The graphic novel Syndrome, which I mentioned in the start, features drawings of naked women covered in blood, and a character who is a serial killer that hangs people from their ankles and slashes their throats, draining their bodies of blood. Blake was not the only writer in this graphic novel, and the other writers actually wrote most of it, but it is thought that he did take some inspiration from the writings. Blake pleaded not guilty, but of course he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He managed to miss the death sentence just because the prosecution team didn't see a point in pushing for it, as there are hundreds of people on death row and nobody has been put to death in over 10 years in the state. In February of 2019, a Californian judge ordered Blake to pay the family of Ayanna $42 million. Ayanna's daughter is now in the care of her grandmother and living in Ukraine. The murder of Ayanna is considered by the police to be one of the most brutal and gruesome in West Hollywood history. One of the forensic pathologists who examined Ayanna's body said, "I have never seen this before, and I doubt hardly any forensic pathologist in this country or abroad have even seen this. Outside of perhaps wartime. It's extremely rare."